Season 3, episode 18 of the Cup of Mets podcast. I'm Ian Bosniak, joined alongside by Matthew DeSantis. As always, we got a good one in store for you today. Post All-Star break, leading up to the trade deadline. It's a good one. But before we get going, remember to give us a follow on Instagram, YouTube, and X. We're at Cup of Mets. Subscribe to the podcast, whether it be on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Visit cupofmets.com for all your latest merch. And last but not least, download that SeatGeek app, punching code Cup of Mets at first purchase to get $20 off. Matthew, how are you?
I'm good. It was a great series against the Yankees. Rode the momentum in versus the Braves, and then, past two games they didn't play so well. But you can't win them all.
No, you can't. The boys kind of tailed off the last two games. And yes, you said it. We recorded last week. Not sure, you weren't on last week, but Rob and I recorded. The Mets had just split their 4-game series against Washington, went into a 2-game set against the Yankees. As you said, Matt, they kicked their asses. I mean, quite frankly, the first game was tighter than the second. The second game, the Mets just obliterated them. Francisco Lindor wiped them with his ass, whatever. So it just kind of that was great, and that since the All-Star break, the Mets are 6-4, but the Mets concluded a 4-game set with the Braves today. They lost the last two. Today they lost 9-2, and we'll get to that in a moment. A few quick notes before we get going. Interestingly enough, the second game of the Braves series, Friday night, Kodai Senga made his season debut. He was brilliant. 5 1/3 and 9 strikeouts, 1 run allowed, and infield fly. He hops off the mound to get out of the way for the infielders to converge and make the play, and suffers a calf strain, a high-grade calf strain in that we were told today. Done for the season, most likely the regular season. I guess we'll see when it comes to the postseason if A, we're there, and B, if he's eligible. But uh, since then, the Mets just couldn't hit. But first and foremost, just we're not going to, talk about Senga for a whole lot, but we were waiting on him to come back, man. And it really just sucks that he came back, did what he did. We know the type of individual he is, so we were all feeling really good for him, performed, and then, came and went like it was nothing. It just really kind of shitty, especially the time of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were expecting him back, and I was expecting him back, more than just one game, but he looked terrific in that one game. Seeing him go down was absolutely awful, and now we don't have him for our big playoff push. And that was a big like momentum push swing for the Mets. Like you can tell in the dugout, like it just they like lost morale when he went down. But luckily, we have 2 days left until the trade deadline. If Stearns and Co. really wants to make a shot at it, they got to go out and get another starting pitcher, I think.
Absolutely.
We've listed guys like Eric Fetty and Jack Flaherty. Um, Maybe even go with a Jesus Luzardo from the Marlins, but realistically, you gotta weigh your options here because I'm not gonna. When we trade for Stanek, that was a low end number 30 prospect. I didn't mind that.
Yep.
So it's really, I think they have to add at least another starting pitcher. I wouldn't go even further into the reliever market though, because those prices are just crazy.
Oh yeah. I mean, we're seeing it right now. What the Rays got from the Padres today for Jason Adam was just absurd. But yeah, you mentioned before the Mets went ahead and acquired Ryan Stanek from the Seattle Mariners. Played for the Astros prior. Very, very effective pitcher. Not having the greatest seasons, like traditionally, statistically speaking, but when you look at his underlying numbers, some of his baseball savant figures, much better than what his underlying numbers indicate. But again, losing Senga really tough, especially coming off the heels of losing Christian Scott for the rest of the year. We said to ourselves, all right, we'll plug McGill in and whoever else potentially make that for that sixth slot. And Kodai comes back and he pitches like he did. City Field was rocking for 5 innings, 5 1/3, and then he gets hurt. And I know that it's completely different that this happened in the middle of the season opposed to before the season, but it just kind of reminded me of the Edwin Diaz injury. Just like it was a lower leg injury. Granted, he was able to walk off on his own power and he was okay. And it's a calf strain opposed to tearing your leg in half, right? But it was just, as you said, a momentum shift. So really crappy that A, he leaves, but B, now that opens up another hole that the Mets need to try to fill within these next couple of days leading up to the deadline. So that's that. The Mets also, DJ Stewart sent down to the minors. They utilized his last option. The Mets did acquire Jesse Winker. So that's two players now that we've mentioned over the last over the last minute, essentially, that they've acquired since we last spoke in Ryan Stanek and Jesse Winker. We'll touch upon that in a moment. But the Mets did option DJ Stewart to the minors, kept Ben Gamel up. I actually put out a tweet earlier on today. I'm not sure if you saw it or the day or yesterday, but no, it definitely was earlier today because they acquired Winker last night. But I almost a lot of people were saying, "Oh, Gamel's going to be the casualty when Jesse Winker comes aboard." But when you look at DJ Stewart, his biggest appeal is the fact that he can get on base at a high clip, and aside from that, there aren't many other attributes to him aside from an occasional home run. Right? You get that home run in Winker, and you also get a high on base percentage in Winker. So I feel like they're going to use Gamel in a similar capacity that they used Travis Jankowski 2 years ago in 2022.
I mean, that could very much be possible, but like realistically, I feel like there's somebody else at AAA that you can have that can offer you similar Ben Gamel attributes, but can offer you like the possibility to rip a home run or a triple or something like that. Like honestly, I guess they gotta really assess like is like Ben Gamel's roster spot worth it right now? I mean, we got to send down DJ Stewart, say we make another move, we're probably gonna have to clear a couple 40-man spots. So
And Stearns has been doing that, and that's the good thing. And we've been
yeah.
seeing it, and it's noted. We can all figure that he's going to make another deal or two. I don't think Ben Gamel is a piece that we're going to be seeing often. It leads way into Jesse Winker probably would have started today had he not gotten to New York so late, this morning. And then again, a guy like Starling Marte's on the mend, right? So he's going to be coming back for some outfield insurance. So again, DJ Stewart optioned, Ben Gamel stays, and I think that's okay for now. We'll see how they utilize him. And then lastly, today, before we talk about the trade deadline, everything leading up to that, the Mets concluded their 4 game set against the Atlanta Braves. Mentioned before, they lost 9-2. They went 21 innings, I want to say, without scoring.
Since it's
The
the Sal Licata tweet.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The Salicata tweet. So there's a couple things that have been going on. So Mets swept the Yankees, took the first two against the Braves. Sanger goes down. The Mets didn't score for the final 4 innings on Friday night. They got shut out yesterday.
Yeah.
And then today they were shut out through the first 7. So I believe it was 21 innings of scoreless baseball that the Mets offense put up. But again, we noted last episode, the Mets had only put up 3 runs in Miami across the first 3 games after the All-Star break. So the offense has been kind of lagging
Yeah.
behind, others at the moment. What were some of your thoughts, your takeaways from today's game? David Peterson did not look great out on the mound. Ryan Stanek made his Mets debut, did not look good either. What do you make of the game in its entirety?
I mean, they just didn't look good from the jump. I mean, I'm not gonna give Peterson shit. He's looked fantastic this year. Everybody has a bad game. But the offense just there was no offense today. And when you in baseball, when you have a team like the Braves ripping 5 home runs, 6 home runs, you gotta score some sort of runs. So
And the thing
you
is, they had opportunities today, and that's what really bothered me. They had Ronaldo Lopez on the fringes for all 3 innings
yeah.
that he pitched. They collected 7 hits. So it's not like they didn't, put the bat on the ball. It was just a
Yeah.
matter of hitting, getting those timely hits. They were 1 for 6. They were 1 for 9 with runners in scoring position. And I believe in the Marlins series, they were like 2 for 20 something at one point with runners in scoring position. So the Mets are getting these guys in runners in scoring position. It just they can't cash in, and that's where they've been cashing in all year. So just not a great time for it to be occurring. But as you said with David Peterson before, It also goes for all 9 bats that are in the lineup and those guys that are on the bench as well. Everyone goes through those rough patches. So just kind of remains to be seen how they rebound from here. They have the Twins coming in. Again, however, winning the first 2 against Atlanta, knowing that you're ahead of them in the wild card standings, you got that first slot. You got to try to pull out one more win from those last 2 and try to win the series. You know what I mean? And try to finish it off with a solid note. And they weren't able.
Absolutely. It was a little disappointing seeing them lose those last two, but in like kind of like ugly fashion. Like they just didn't look good. They
Flat.
weren't they weren't playing like the fundamentals or anything like that. I just I hate seeing the Mets fans like post on Twitter the updated standings like every day. It's like July 28th. That's gonna look totally different in a month.
Yeah,
No reason to like keep an eye on it. Just try and win games.
without a doubt.
That's
That's
realistically what it comes down
that's
to. Like go out there every day. Don't even focus on the playoffs because it's still midsummer and just play to win.
absolutely. I mean, that's all you really can do in the grand scheme of things. You mentioned before David Peterson, who's been really, really good this year. Obviously, the walks have been a concern for him. He walked 3 more batters today, but outside of that, he's been really good limiting the runs. Did give up 4 earned runs today and picked up his first loss of the season. Somebody else who made their return to the rotation yesterday, Tyler McGill. Okay.
Okay.
If
Yeah.
Kodai Senga's not in the rotation, the Mets are going 5 man, right? So you got McGill, you got Peterson, you got Sevy, you got Manaya, and you got Quintana. Okay. Tyler McGill, I can't say it enough. I feel bad saying this because I like the individual. I like the guy and I like his makeup. I like what he has. But the Mets have to transition him into some sort of a reliever or something. They have to make sure that he's number 7, 8 on the depth chart. Yes, he gave us 6 innings yesterday, which we've been rarely seeing over the last couple starts. We've been
Yeah.
seeing a lot of 5 inning starts, even against the Yankees. But giving up another 4 earned runs, we haven't been seeing that a lot from our starters. And whenever McGill is on the mound, granted, he was in Syracuse for a little bit, but whenever he's on the mound, he tends to be the one that on pitching wise, like kind of gets the Mets out of the game at an early point. The Mets
Yeah.
were in a 4-0 hole. I mean, by the 7th, they were in a 3-0 hole by the 5th, and the kid Schwellenbach for the Braves, he was dealing. So the Mets had no shot by the 5th inning, down 3-0. And yeah, 3 runs isn't the end of the world, but then going ahead, giving up a 4th earned run because he went into the 7th and that was earned. It's just I don't know. I just don't think that. And yes, we're going to speak about the fact that the Mets are looking at the starting pitching market and they're going to try to upgrade there. But a rotation of McGill, Peterson, Sevy, Minaya, and Quintana just is not sustainable.
No, it's not. And like you can't expect fans like want them to like go out and like make a crazy trade. Like our rotation is not sustainable because they can't make it past the fifth. And then it's like you can't rely on like a half shaky ass bullpen to like bail you out when our pitchers can't make it to five. Like Sevy can. Manaya, he can't.
Sevy's the only one that can.
Yeah.
And Quintana, I guess you can say Quintana can go 6, right? But then we're all as fans looking at the bullpen saying, you got to upgrade the bullpen. You got to upgrade the bullpen. The pen sucks, this, that, and the third. And the starters are going out there and yeah, they're giving you 5 innings, 2 earned runs allowed. They're keeping you in the game. But all of that pressure, all that utilization of the relievers in those innings, it builds up. And that's why we're at the point in the season where we're at.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. But then the next question turns into like, if do you want to go out and grab an Eric Fetty? He's on the books next year for 7.5 million, so that's pretty low. So they're probably gonna be looking for a pretty decent prospect, like maybe a Colin Huck, maybe or something like that.
While I am with you on being low on Colin Huck, I'm not sure that I would trade Colin Huck
Right now,
for,
because you're trading him at his low.
yeah, I'm not trading
And
him for Eric Fetty, somebody who, again, he reestablished himself in the KBO, came back this year, 3.11 ERA and 21 starts for the White Sox. but I'm not necessarily doing that. Strikeout percentage, whiff percentage, chase rate, they're all down. He's a contact oriented pitcher, so I'm not sure that I would go ahead and trade my first round draft pick from last year. But in Eric Fetty, and I know that you were probably going to name other pitchers as well, but in Eric Fetty, I would try to work out a deal with the White Sox for because I think he'd be the
Just
perfect fit.
I'm at the end of the day, I'm curious to see what the White Sox end up getting for him, like what the parameters of his trade deadline deal is going to be.
I mean, just imagine what the Mets would fetch right now for Severino, even Quintana,
Oh my God.
even Quintana.
The
We'd be getting,
sellers market's insane. Even somebody would probably give you something decent for JD. Uh, who else?
absolutely,
You'd be able
absolutely.
to sell Seti for fucking probably a king's ransom. I mean, he is a rental, so but you've seen crazier shit. You've seen Gleyber Torres get traded for 3 months of Aroldis Chapman.
Yeah. Listen, I think that it all comes down to the expanded playoffs, right? More teams feel like they're in it. That you saw a very weird trade today between the Cubs and the Rays. Both
Yeah.
teams kind of seemingly on the fringes of being out of it, but also still competitive at the same time. I think the Cubs are cooked, and I think the Rays are cooked as well. But they made a trade. All-Star Isaac Paredes went to the
Yeah.
Cubs, and Christopher Morel went to the Rays. Just like it's almost like a win-win trade, but kind of need for
I-
need.
Yeah, and I feel like that trade might work out for both because the Rays usually know what they're doing in terms, and they've had a terrific deadline so far.
Oh, they traded Randy Arozarena to Seattle.
Yeah, and the Marlins have had a great trade deadline in terms of the talent they brought back. But the Marlins, they usually ruin those hitters like real early. Um, but we
Or they
just
trade them after two productive seasons.
yeah, and that kid they got Xavier Edwards looks like a young stud.
Who'd they get for Jazz Chisholm?
They got the Yankees number 19 and 20 prospects,
No way.
which now turns into the Marlins number 4 catcher and first baseman Augustin Ramirez, who over 2 levels this season has 20 home runs, 69 RBIs, 42 walks, 66 strikeouts, and 18 stolen bases. The Marlins pretty much just went out and traded. They just traded their assets for like known minor league bats that have home runs. The next guy they got, De Los Santos for AJ Puck, is pretty fucking good.
Oh yeah.
He
Yep.
has 29 home runs, 86 RBIs over 2 levels this year.
And that's another team that's vying for a National League wildcard spot where Puck went in the Diamondbacks.
Yeah, that was probably their best return, honestly. But I mean, I don't know. A lot of the Yankees, some of these guys that they trade these guys young and then they turn out to be something. So,
I feel like Chisholm and Stroman might have some beef in the Bronx because both of them are like, everyone look at me,
yeah.
you know? So I feel like they may have some trouble together. Um, but yeah, trade deadline's upon us. Again, the Mets are 6-4 since the All-Star break. They're sitting at a lovely 55-50. When you come and look at the standings, they are in third place and then in the National League East. And then when it comes to the wild card, the Mets are a half game up on the Arizona Diamondbacks for that third and final spot. But them, the Padres, and the Braves have kind of been shuffling over the next few days. So if the Mets win tomorrow and both teams lose, the Mets will catapult in front of them. So it just kind of a give and take at this point. But again, we're not even to August yet. The Mets did go ahead, however, and acquire Jesse Winker from the Washington Nationals. They sent Tyler Stewart, who was, I believe, the Mets' number 19th overall prospect, or our Tyler Stewart was our number
Yeah,
19th
he was
overall
MLB
prospect.
pipeline, I believe, 16.
So 16th on MLB Pipeline, 19th on Cup of Mets, so that's more important. But but he gets sent to the Washington Nationals. Tyler Stewart at that 6'9" frame heads to Washington for Jesse Winker, the longtime Met killer. He's having a great season. 256, 373 on base percentage, 418 slugging percentage, 11 home runs, 14 stolen bases. When you look at Baseball Savant, he doesn't whiff a lot, doesn't chase a ton. His walk rate's up, and that's really far removed from his days in Cincinnati, where he would just be swinging for the fences and he'd strike out a bunch.
Yeah,
I love the acquisition. Yeah, they lost an arm in an area in terms of pitching that, you're trying to build up in the system, but I think Stewart would have been further along had the Mets felt really confident in his abilities moving forward,
yeah,
especially this front office. So I really like the return. I love Jesse Winker and I like where he fits, especially considering, if he does produce in the outfield, again, it makes for a good problem to have with the likes of Iglesias and McNeil in the infield, and
yeah.
it just kind of crowds the team with more talent. I think that Winker's his intensity, his fire will be really, really great down the postseason stretch. So I'm really excited for this acquisition.
Yeah, no, and last night I see it come through, and I'm scrolling Twitter trying to see who the return was, who we were giving up. He Tyler Stewart, I believe, is he's 24, turning 25. I would not
Double
doubt if
A.
he's and I would not doubt if he's Rule 5 eligible the next 2 years.
Right.
Either next year or the year after that. Don't quote me on that, but and the Mets have been taking a shit ton of pitchers these past two drafts. So there's some guys that they've just recently promoted. Dakota Hawkins, a pitcher selected in last year's draft. So I'm assuming he's taken Tyler Stewart's rotation spot up in Binghamton.
Right. And I also feel like you look at the development, you mentioned Dakota Hawkins. Yes, Cade Morris, someone who was drafted last year, was promoted a couple months ago, but a lot of people are saying he's going to be right in the thick of Double A next year, right? That's an acceleration in and of itself. Brandon Sproat is pretty close, and even though he's in Double A, so the Mets have arms, and then obviously who they've drafted over this last year. But again, having Jesse Winker on the Mets, I almost feel like it was kind of destined, given all of his antics with Met fans,
Yeah,
making that game-saving
he's
catch and
always been
waving at
close with
them.
Mets fans and
He's
stuff, so
always
that's
been
good. And we really didn't give up anything crazy. He has a 2 WAR this season.
two WAR, and we gave up,
More
how?
than more than Jazz Chisholm's 1.3. So
Yeah. Listen, it's not a make or break trade in any capacity, but it helps shore up something that we needed in that
yeah,
left-handed bat in the outfield because we were only getting walks from DJ Stewart and then Ben Gamel's not providing any offense, right? So Winker comes in, he'll be able to play right field with Marte, they'll be able to give Marte a blow when he comes back. McNeil, there's just so many different combinations in which Carlos Mendoza can assemble his defense and his alignment. So I think Winker is just another really, really good
yeah.
addition, good problem to have when you're kind of trying to figure out the landscape of how you want to play your squad. In regards to acquisitions, the Mets also went ahead and sent their number 30th prospect, according to MLB Pipeline, Rylan Thomas, who was actually recently just promoted to AAA Syracuse. They sent him to the Seattle Mariners in exchange for Ryan Stanek, who, listen, I don't want people to judge Stanek off of his debut today with the Mets. He was brutal. Threw an inning against Atlanta, gave up 2 hits, 3 earned runs, struck out one. At the end of the day, Stanek's ERA at 4.95 is beyond inflated due to his last several appearances.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
outside of that, he's been a pretty good cog in that Mariners bullpen. You go to Baseball Savant, his advanced metrics, his chase percentage is in the 92nd percentile, whiff percentage in the 87th percentile, K percentage, 72nd percentile. He throws a million miles per hour. He averages 98 miles per hour, right? Expected ERA is in the 67th percentile. I'm going to look up his FIP right now, but like, what do you make of that trade in and of itself? What do you think about Rylan Thomas heading to Seattle, his upside where he could be, and what do you think about adding Stanek to the Mets bullpen that needs arms right now, but also arms that have been there and done that? You look at a guy like Stanek; he had a 115 ERA back in 2022. I think it's a great addition.
I do too, and I'm not. Like I like Ryan Stanek and think that only sending out Rylan Thomas, I can promise you, Rylan Thomas would have never have hit one home run at Citi Field. I can promise you that he would have been Rule 5 drafted or like released or something or never called up. Like, come on, man. We already see them not called Luke Ritter. He has like over 20 home runs. So it's like at this point, you know what? They're doing it to make the team better. And they saw how much it costs to get a like, you know what, like a real good reliever. And if you look at AJ Puck's numbers, they're not very good.
No, no, they're not very good at all. And then you look, I mean, we mentioned it before, but you look at all the other relievers. The Padres parted with their top pick from last year in
Yeah.
order to get Jason Adam. Hunter Harvey then
Yeah.
traded to Kansas City. It included a prospect and a compensation pick.
Yeah.
These packages are not light. So to be able to get Ryan Stanek for what the Mets did, I think is really impressive.
Exactly. And Ryland Thomas doesn't even get into the top 30 of the Mariners. So I mean, I don't mind the trade. It could have we could they could have went with someone better than him. So
Sure.
overall, not mad with that one at all.
No. And again, I don't have his up to date. Fangraphs does not update like MLB.com per
Yeah.
se when it comes to stats. But Ryan Stanek coming into the day, again, his ERA went up to 4.95 due to the 3 earned runs today. But coming into the day, he had a 4.38 ERA. His FIP was 4.02. So the traditional numbers are lying to a capacity. To a capacity. He's definitely pitched better than what his numbers entail. And then when you look at his raw stuff, he's got a beautiful split finger, an excellent four seam fastball, great sinker, great slider, and he really divvies up the pitches nicely. And I think that's what makes him so effective and catches hitters off guard. It just really comes down to his command, not hanging those pitches when he's trying to get them over and kind of going from there. And other than that, I think that he's a really great fit. If you're looking at the bullpen right now, right, who they have, where do you slot Ryan Stanek? Like, would you have him set up for Diaz? Granted, today was not a good showing, right? But would you
Yeah.
have him ahead of Ottavino in the depth chart? Where would you put him?
I mean, to be fair to Ryan Stanek, I wouldn't if I was manager of the Mets, I wouldn't have put him in today. I mean, he just got here. What were we losing? Like 5-0 when he came in?
Right. Yeah.
I think 5-0. The team looked flat. I probably would have went with someone else there. Um, but overall, I think the acquisition was great. And I think overall it was just one game and he can come back in 2 days or so and throw a nice inning, and then maybe everybody will start looking at it better. But we didn't give shit up, man. We didn't give up shit. And when you start looking around the league at some of these other trades, like Dylan Lesko getting traded, that's a big prospect. He's like 70th or so overall on MLB pipeline, so that's a pretty big deal.
Massive. And I think it was more so because Jason Adam of the Rays, now Padres, had a couple of years of control. But it's funny that I just mentioned because I forgot to mention from the outset in the quick notes, I mentioned Ryan Stanek as potential setup man. It's because Daniel Nunez went on the IL.
Yeah.
What a
But
big blow that was.
I'm
And that
hearing, isn't that only supposed to be a few weeks?
a couple weeks, hopefully they say that they don't think it's going to be a long stay, whatever. It was a right pronator strain. I won't lie. I'd be lying if I said that I exactly knew what that was,
Not a
but
clue.
retroactive to 2 days ago, so the 26th, losing Danielle really, I think, accelerated the Mets' need for another arm. And I think that's what propelled them to make that deal really quickly for Stanek. But in the interim, I don't know about you. Absolutely loved what I saw from Phil Maton against the Braves in the 10th inning on, what was it, Thursday night when they won 3-2. I loved what I saw from Maton. Pitched to contact, knew who was up, and was able to get the job done. He picked up his second win of the year. I think Phil Maton could be a nice
Yeah.
seventh man
And that
fit.
was only for cash considerations, if I'm not wrong.
I think a player to be named later.
Player to be named later. Gotcha.
Player to be named later. So far, looking at the Mets trade deadline, what they've given up, what they've brought in, they have brought in Phil Maton, Ryan Stanek, and Jesse
See
Winker,
what-
and they have given up outfielder Ryland Thomas, starting pitcher Tyler Stewart, and then a player to be named later. And hopefully It's not another Hector Rodriguez, right?
Let's hope not.
That would be brutal.
Yeah.
Sending him over for Naquin. Um, do you think the Mets are done looking at bullpen help?
I don't think so. I mean, it's hard to tell because this is such a crazy seller's market where like I don't know, Stearns is a smart guy. What if we saw him like sell off a Severino, cash in on the seller's market, but then maybe reallocate those sources towards, I don't know, another starting pitcher. I don't know. Maybe a starting pitcher with a little more control.
I mean, there's a ton of things that they can do, especially with the prices that people are putting on starting pitchers and obviously relievers, as we've been talking about. I don't think, especially with the injury now to Sanga, that they can go ahead and trade a
No,
Quintana, a Sevi, a Manaya, or anyone along those lines, right? To kind of fill the needs of others while getting what we need in return. But with the Sanga and Scott injuries, I feel like that report that came out a couple weeks ago kind of went down the tubes. But when I'm looking at the rotation, I think the rotation and the bullpen in and of itself, I think the biggest question is you look at Jose Budo, and Jose Budo has been incredible out of the bullpen, and he's being given
yeah.
more high leverage innings by Carlos Mendoza. We also know that he can start though, and that's
I don't know.
bro. That's the bugaboo. He can start. He's a better starter than Tyler McGill.
But
I'm gonna
he's
go
also been looking really good in the relief role, so you
that he
might as
has,
well
but that's
keep.
his only spot right now.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So again, I'm not necessarily saying that the Mets should go ahead and insert Jose Budo into the rotation because right now you don't need a six-man rotation. You got your five guys in Quintana, Sevy, Minaya, Peterson, McGill. But there's question marks with McGill, so that's a question mark every 5 days. You have a Minaya and a Peterson who struggle to go beyond 5 innings, so the bullpen gets taxed even further. And I guess
Mhm.
that's maybe where Budo can pick up 2 innings or so. But at the same time, you just wonder, all right, at full strength, you want your bullpen to be Diaz, Nunez, Ottavino, Stanek, Maitan, Budo, Ottavino. Did I say Ottavino? Like, and then they got Alex Young, who's looked incredible since the Mets have
Yeah.
picked Alex Young up. He hasn't let up a run for the
Yeah.
Mets, let alone this season at all in 7 games. He's been great. But
I would like to see the Mets consider calling up. If they don't land a decent starting pitcher at the deadline, I'd like to see them consider calling up like Dom Hamill.
well, yeah, so that was my next question. So it seems like after the Mets acquired Jesse Winker, so they got that outfield bat. They went ahead and acquired Maton and Stanek, and I wouldn't be surprised, as we just mentioned before, that the Mets are still on the prowl for maybe another relief arm or something. But with the injury to Senga, with the injury to Scott, it's becoming more and more apparent that the Mets are going to be looking to add a starting pitcher. And there was a tweet from Andy Martino the other night who
Mhm.
said bluntly he heard from an executive around the league that the Mets are going for it. They are going all in to go for it. And again, all in, when we say all in, I think they just mean the activity level, meaning they're going to go ahead and they're going to fill up all of their weak spots compared to, oh, yeah, we're going to go out and get the biggest fish in the world. We're going to trade Jet Williams. We're going to trade Drew Gilbert, this guy. None of those guys are going anywhere, right? But
So
yeah, but so when you're looking at the starting pitching, a guy like Dom Hamill has looked really, really good as of recent. And he's pitching much, much better. And I think that's something that we can all look at and be pleased about because he hasn't been pitching great. He hasn't given up more than 2 runs over his last 3 starts, which has been great.
yeah.
How would you go about the starting pitching market? Are there any pitchers in particular? I mean, we're hearing everyone from a potential acquisition of a guy like Jack Flaherty, who's got a 2.95 ERA this year. We're hearing everyone from a Jack Flaherty to potentially a Garrett Crochet if the Mets decide to go that far. I mean, there's been no substantial rumors to that, but given the fact that Sanga's out and Crochet's under team control for beyond this year, you
Yeah.
ought to think that the Mets. We've also heard about a potential reunion with Chris Bassett, who's under team control for another 20 million bucks next year. And then Eric Fedde, as we spoke about before. So, what do you make of the starting pitching market right now? If you were David Stearns, where would you turn?
I mean, as much as I do somewhat like the idea of Bassett. I just feel like they're not going to want to like clog up another 20 million for next year as they have a lot of money coming off the books already. I think that they're like pretty excited to think like, okay, like let's see what we got this year. And then as the young talent keeps coming up, um, we can fill in needs as they see fit. Um, but in terms of how I would realistically go about the starting pitching market, I I wouldn't mind a Jack Flaherty because he might not cost as much as like an Eric Fetty. He's a rental, even though he has slightly better ERA. Fetty has that option next year for the cheap team option, which is going to be teams are going to like that. So
The White Sox have a lot of pieces that they can move and not only move, but get like a ransom for.
yeah, I mean that Garrett Croquette thing, Crochet, whatever.
Croquette, Crochet, 157 strikeouts and 111 and a third of an inning.
They can probably get a lot for him. And I would do it, but I don't know about all these reports saying that he would want to shut down at some point in this year. I mean, because he's
He,
already I think at his innings max.
he wants a contract extension, right?
I would be like I would trade for him and then offer like 140 million over 10 years. Pull a Braves on him.
Full of Braves on him. Yeah, I mean, listen, I think that it's hard, especially in this market with what the Mets need and what so many other teams need. We
Yeah.
listed a couple pitchers, and I think that there may only be a couple others that could be under consideration. It's a very tight market, and are several teams who are in the mix for the same pitcher. I guess if I was David Stearns, my biggest thing would be going after Eric Fetty, but not overpaying for him. I think he's not only been great since coming back from the KBO, but that team control going into next year. You look at what they have going into next year under contract. They have Manaya, they have Kodai Senga, and then they have the McGills, they have the Petersons,
Yeah.
right? So that makes Fetty really intriguing to me, and I don't think the
I have
Mets
a
are
yeah, I have a question for you. Who would you give up for Fetty, realistically?
Kevin Parada.
Like a package around Parada? I'm just not sure if that's going to entice them because they have one of their top prospects is a catcher, Edgar Cuero, who they got from the Angels from the Giolito trade.
Sure. I mean, they can go in a couple different directions. I wouldn't mind, even though you'll probably disagree with this, I wouldn't mind trading an AJ Ewing or a Boston Barrow only because both shortstops will both kind of arrive at the same time. They're both middle infielders.
Dude, I don't
No,
even
no,
think
I'm
that
not
gets the
saying
combo started.
I'm
It
not
might be like a Tidwell or Vassal to get that combo started. I'd
well,
give him Vassal. What do you think?
Yeah, sure. I'd give them Vassal as well. I wouldn't give them Tidwell, but I would try hard. Yeah, sure. They're one of their top prospects is a catcher, but what's his estimated time of arrival here, right? We're looking at 2025. Okay, so Parada's around the same time. They also have a DH in the American League, remember? Oh, and then and then in the National League. Wow, I'm showing my age. Um, but yeah, maybe like a Mike Vasile, Alex Ramirez.
It's just kind of like disappointing seeing that Tidwell, Vassal, and Hamill are all at our highest level, and
And they
and
can't come up and make an impact.
they can't be promoted. Honestly, dude, I don't want Sproat going to AAA. I want to see him get promoted to the MLB from AA. I don't know why.
It
It
seems
just
like you get the
scares
best
me.
results from there.
It's scary, like because why are our guy? If you go back and look at Vassal and Hamill's numbers in Binghamton, and then look at AAA, my God,
Obviously, it gets a little bit more difficult, but double A is a level that a lot of people deem as integral. So to have this type of drop off when you hit the triple A level, and you mentioned a Blade Tidwell, he's got a 5.56 ERA in triple A. The most staggering thing to me is his strikeout rate that has dropped.
yeah,
In double A and single A, he struck out 153 and 116. Last year, he struck out. Well, in Binghamton, he struck out 44 and 37 and a third this year. And then in Syracuse, he's only struck out 38 and 45 innings. So strikeout rate's going down a little bit. I mean,
Yeah. And if
listen,
you look at his numbers and you look at 11-6 last year with a 3.57 ERA and his 153 strikeouts, a team like the Braves, who are very aggressive with young prospects, would have called him up.
sure, sure. I also wouldn't mind, and I know that I may get clapback from this. I also wouldn't mind maybe dabbling a Jesus bias in there. I know that he's got a lot of talent. He's performing at a low level, but again, he's not expected to be ready by 2027. Still has some levels to jump. I think he's only in single A with the St. Lucie Mets. So there's several things that the
Yeah.
Mets can do, but I would probably go for
I don't know
Fetty.
about Baez is in the he was promoted to the Cyclones, but I think he's been hurt actually.
Okay. All right. But yeah, they could do that. I wouldn't mind the idea of Bassett. I think you get him at a cheaper price, obviously, because the Mets would be taking on his
On that money.
contract for next year. But again, you look at that, then guys that we're actually paying cash to, that you look at the payroll and you see it, opposed to a McGill or a Peterson who's making $1 million. The only guys that would really be making cash are Mania, Senga, and Bassett. Chris Bassett would definitely help. He had a much better last year than he did this year. This year he's 8 and 9, got roughed up the other day. But Chris Bassett, I think, would be a really good acquisition. What I would give up for him, I'm not 100% sure. Maybe like two prospects in the back end of my 30 or 40, something along those lines, but nothing crazy, nothing over the top.
If I'm taking on all that money, yeah, it's gonna be back
Yeah.
ends type.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be back end stuff. Do you think there's any realistic idea that the Mets actually jump in the conversation for Crochet or no?
I don't know, bro. A lot of things can happen over these next Monday and Tuesday. Trade deadlines at 6. I just I would be down with it, but I think Crochet is gonna cost you either Gilbert or Clifford.
I'm not doing either.
So
Yeah, I'm not doing either. I'm not doing either.
they're looking at like, all right, let's sell at this kid's high, even though his past few games haven't been great.
He reminds me of Patrick Corbin at a young age.
Yeah, just
What
bigger.
right? What would you give up for Crochet? Would you give up Gilbert for him? Because when it comes down to it,
For Crochet, I would build the package around Gilbert.
right? I gotta be honest. It's funny that you're saying that and that we're talking about this in general because even though I've been on your side in regards to in May and really, really, really early June before the Mets get hot, we were like sell, sell, sell.
Yeah.
It's funny and hold on to the pieces. I still want to keep the mentality, and I think you can agree, unless it's a Crochet for you, but for me, it's not even that. I do not want to deal any of my top prospects because right now I don't feel like there are the players on the market that can make the impact of what you'd be giving up. And then on
Yeah.
top of it, while, yeah, we really may make a wild card spot this year, we may make a run in the playoffs. Our window is really 2020, 25 and beyond.
Yeah.
So to trade those pieces for Garrett Crochet, even though he would be a part of the future, you're kind of skeptical about that, especially a guy who's just proving himself right
Yeah.
now.
And with Kadai Senga going down, it looks like we'll be keeping him on the books for through the 2027 year at 15 million per year. So
Right? Because he won't be able to hit
his
his innings limit
400
to
innings
trigger a
limit.
player
Yep.
option, right?
Yep. So it looks like we'll have Kadai for another 3 years at 15 million per. Then you got to think, okay, see, I don't know. Someone's gonna pay Sevy, I think, next offseason.
That's why I have been saying, I said it to Rob last week. I know I've brought it up to you maybe in an episode prior or maybe off air, but I really think that the Mets should try to negotiate some sort of contract with Severino. He looks healthy. He knows how to pitch in New York. It looks like he's adapted to his new type of stuff, not the 230, 240 type of strikeout pitcher he was. Somebody that can pitch to a 3.3 to 3.6 ERA, command the strike zone, pitch to contact, but still get those swing and misses, go deeper into games. He just has that bulldog mentality. And I feel like he's somebody that the Mets should look to extend. I brought up last week to Rob maybe a contract the Phillies gave Taiwan Walker, like a 3 or 4 year deal worth anywhere between 14 and $16 million annually. I think would be a nice fit. He gets that long-term contract. I don't think he's going to get $20 million annually.
Yeah. Well, he just got 13, so he's overplaying that.
Yeah, he got 13. Maybe give him 17 over 4.
Yeah, we'll have to see about that next offseason. Hopefully we have a Brandon Sproat in there or I do we gotta see somebody from AAA. I want to see a Hamill or a Tidwell soon.
Listen, I think I think we're gonna see it, especially if the Mets get are only able to nab a not a fringe starter, but let's say a 5 starter to complement them,
Yeah.
to complement their current group. I definitely think we're gonna see a Tidwell or a Hamill
You
or
know
the
who I'd consider calling the Rockies for Cal Quantrill.
yeah, Cal Quantrill called out Reese McGuire the other day. Do you see that?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, talked about him rubbing one out in the parking lot
Yeah.
when he got arrested for
That
that.
was fucking goaded, bro.
That was great. That was
But
great.
I wouldn't mind if if you don't want to give up anything crazy, I'm sure you can get him for like, a low end in the 20s and then probably a guy not ranked.
Right. And I'm just looking at his numbers now. 409 ERA at Coors Field.
Yeah.
Not too shabby. Bring him in. He's started 21 games this year. Again, I think when it comes down to it, I said it on my solo episode a couple weeks ago, right before the Mets acquired Phil Maton. What the Mets had to do in that point was they had to kind of rid themselves of the players that they had in the bullpen and the arms that they kept on recycling through. And they just had to go to anybody that had some sort of upside, something that they saw that that team didn't, and try to acquire them for very little. They got Maton. Then they got Stanek, who has an ERA north of 4.5, right? So the Mets are doing this type of thing, and a guy like Cal Quantrill, maybe a lot of teams aren't looking at him. I know that his name has been rumored to be in trade discussions, but again, a 4.09 ERA and 21 starts, being a Rocky at Coors Field, pretty impressive. I wouldn't oppose that, but I definitely think that a starting pitcher is important. Again, if I'm the Mets, I go for Fetty. I just like the idea of having somebody else under team control next year because going into the offseason, the big fish is Corbin Burns and I guess a Jack Flaherty after this year. But
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to allocate all that money to a Flaherty if you miss out on a Burns and then you go in and you don't have all these pitchers under team control. So that's why I like the idea of Fetty or a Bassett.
Would you consider trading Acuna?
No,
He's off limits for you too?
he's off limits. I'm really not going all in. I think that the Mets have done enough offensively speaking,
Yeah.
despite their showing over the last 2 days. I think the Mets 1 through 9 are a very, very deep lineup that can contend with a ton of teams, especially with the turnaround that we've seen of Jeff McNeil. The fact that we haven't seen the power from Francisco Alvarez and Pete Alonso's just turning on the Jets, if he is, right? And Nimmo's just hit a skid. But the lineup is so potent. You look at the rotation can only do so much. But again, like you're looking around the league, what else like let's say Crochet, what else are we gonna have to give up with Acuna in order to get Crochet? I'm not
Yeah.
going all in like that, right? So that's why to me, instead of calling the White Sox for a Crochet, I would call them for a Fetty. Know that you have Fetty under team control next year because again, as I alluded to several times already, the Mets, aside from their internal pieces in McGill and Peterson and Budo, they only have Manaya and Sanga under control next year, and that's it. Everyone else
Yeah,
is free agent. So I think that kind of speaks volumes to where the Mets should look when it comes to potential starters.
for sure. So I don't know. We only got a couple days, so we gotta see.
Couple of days, and I'm thinking of maybe on the trade deadline day, maybe we hop on and we do a special or something along those lines.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, maybe you can take some time off of work for some more work with Cup Mets.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Sounds perfect.
Yep.
Maddie, episode 18. Got any final words for the faithful?
Nothing really, man. I mean, I do. We spoke about a whole bunch of shit. I like the moves that they made. I like that they're not rushing anything and they're not pushing all of our chips. I hope that they don't, at least over these next 2 days. I hope that they don't push all the chips in the center. Unless you're gonna walk away with like a Tariq Skubal.
Yeah. Yes, that is one pitcher that
That's my one exception.
I agree. 100%.
If they want Williams and Acuna as a starting package for him, maybe with a throw in Williams, Acuna, and Brett Beatty for Skubal, you doing that? I think I am.
Yeah, I think I
That
would
leaves
too.
you with Gilbert, Clifford, Sproat, Mauricio, Huck, Vargas.
Yeah, I would do that. I would do that. I like that idea.
I would do that.
Tariq Skubal. Yeah, I got some banter back from the Tigers fans because I questioned why the Tigers, who are a team that's on the mend, they're looking like they're going to compete within the next 2 years or so, why they would trade Skubal. I understand he
Yeah.
has 2 years of team control after this, and the Tigers aren't going to be able to extend them this, that, and the third. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. He would be my one exception when it comes to dealing players X, Y, and Z when it comes to the Mets farm system. Outside of that, I'm kind of sticking to my guns. You know what the Mets have to do to fortify, whether it be the rotation, the bullpen, and they're going to operate within those parameters. And hopefully, another deal or two comes to fruition. The Mets can beef up the rotation and we can ride, dude. I mean, Rob was the only one that kind of kept the positive note and said that he believed that we were going to be there in the end. So hopefully, again, we're buying. The Mets have three coming up against the Minnesota Twins. Jose Quintana, Sean Manaea, and Luis Severino will get the starts tomorrow through Wednesday. Hopefully, the Mets can take 2 out of 3 at least from Minnesota.
Yep.
Then they have three starting on Friday. They finally have a day off on Thursday. Then they have three in Los Angeles against the Angels. Hopefully they can beat up on the Angels a little bit.
Yeah, they got to beat up on these teams. I mean, I know Minnesota's good, but I'd like to see them take 2 out of 3 from them.
Take 2 out of 3 from Minnesota. Hopefully go into Los Angeles and sweep the Angels. Try to sweep the Angels. Oh, by the way, Angels. Carlos Estevez went to Philly, of course.
Yeah.
Bullshit. Bullshit, dude.
Yeah, I saw that coming. Phillies are really
They're go-
they're all
they're,
in.
they're going for it, and rightfully so. They should.
As they should be. They're fucking a powerhouse. Their lineup is ridiculous, and they've replenished with the farm system. So
Yeah. And speaking of powerhouses, I mean, they're not really playing like a powerhouse right now in the Yankees, but so funny. We didn't talk about the series. We don't really need to. Mets kicked the Yankees out. But Luis Severino was really right. The Yankees only have two fucking good hitters.
oh, dude, they're so right. If the Yankees lose Soto next year, oof.
Oh boy. Dude. Terrible.
The
Terrible.
talent gap between them and the Orioles is pretty significant, I think.
Yeah. The first night you had Jamani Jones, then you had Juan Soto, Aaron Judge, and then JD Davis batting fourth.
Ridiculous.
Dude. Oh boy.
Ridiculous.
Alrighty. Well, this was fun. Again, the episode right before the 2024 Major League Baseball trade deadline. It's been a pleasure. And as I mentioned before, maybe Maddie, myself, and potentially Rob will hop on Wednesday, recap the trade deadline. Stay tuned to all of our social media platforms. Follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and X. We are at Cup of Mets. Subscribe to the podcast, whether it be on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Visit cupofmets.com for all your latest merch. And last but not least, head to the App Store, download that SeatGeek app, punch in code Mets at first purchase to get $20 off. And for Matthew DeSantis, I'm Ian Bosniak. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you in a couple days. Trade deadline is on the horizon. Let's do it. Let's go Mets. Good night, everybody.
Let's go, Mets, baby.